Joining us is Mike McCormick, former White House stenographer and the author of 2 pro-Trump books. His latest one was published in March. It's called Joe Biden Unauthorized and the 2020 Crack-Up of the Democratic Party. Mike McCormick, welcome to WION.
Thank you, Palki. I'm excited to be on in India.
Awesome. You've been quoted as saying this about Joe Biden, and I'll quote, it is a complete difference from what he was in 2017. He's lost a step, and he doesn't seem to have the same mental acuity as he did 4 years ago. What is the basis of your assertion?
Well, when I was a stenographer, I worked with Joe Biden from 2011 through 2017, and I traveled around the world with Joe. I listened to him every day, and I heard how excited he gets about being a politician. When I heard him in the Democratic National Convention speech, so that was 3 weeks ago, I guess, he was reading every word. That's not Joe Biden. That's something that Joe Biden never did. He used to make a joke about reading speeches. He'd walk out with his speeches that his speechwriters wrote. He'd say, my speechwriters wrote on this all day, and I'm not going to use any of it. And everybody would laugh. And then he would just start talking from the heart and from his gut and speak. And if I got paid by the word, I'd be richer than Trump. Because Joe Biden likes to speak and not stop. So I was paid by the hour, and it was a lot of overtime because Joe Biden likes to talk for a long time. He's not that guy anymore. All he can do now is read what's in front of him on the teleprompter. He's lost a step. He's lost his composure. He's lost a bit of his focus. He's just, I think at times, he seems to me a doddering old man.
Could it be because he's nervous, because he has more at stake? To be honest, Joe Biden has never been known for his oratorical skills. Is this recent scrutiny more about his style than his age?
No, I wouldn't say that because, Joe Biden he was very proud of how strong he was as a speaker. That's why he never used his speeches that were written for him. He would just go out there and talk. The speech that he gave at the Democratic National Convention lasted for 25 minutes. Usually his speeches are 45 minutes to an hour. I don't think he can do a 45-minute speech anymore. I don't think he has the energy level or the vitality to do a 45-minute speech. He used to go and do a 45-minute speech and then do Q&A. It would be an hour and 15 minutes of work. Of him speaking, going. That's what Donald Trump does now. Donald Trump is getting stronger, and Joe Biden, in my opinion, is getting weaker and weaker.
Well, you've written 2 books favoring President Donald Trump. Your line pushes the same narrative as Trump does. Joe Biden is not fit for office. Let me quote from what Trump has said, and these are his words. He doesn't have a clue, he says of Biden. In prime time, he wasn't good, and now it's not prime time. Let's face it, Joe's shot. Is it a coincidence that your books promote the Trump campaign?
Well, it's not a coincidence. When I worked as a stenographer, I worked for 15 years in the White House, 2002 to 2017. So I worked for a year with Donald Trump. And what I saw around me was the movement of America and American people who weren't being listened to, finally being listened to by Donald Trump. That was my first book, 15 Years Deplorable, a White House memoir. And then after having worked for Joe Biden, I realized Joe was going to be running for president, and people had to understand how weak he can be out in public, in front when he's faced with dictatorial world leaders. Vladimir Putin made a fool of Joe Biden standing right in front of me in Moscow. I wrote a chapter about that. Xi Jinping and the Chinese made a fool out of Joe Biden right in front of me when I was in Beijing with him. Both occurred in 2011. This is early in the vice presidency. So when he did that, he was demonstrating to me right in front of me that he was too weak to be a world leader. And what happened was it was never really reported back to the United States. People in the United States didn't see that side of Joe Biden. They didn't see it reported. That's why I wrote the book.
So you're saying he's weak physically and mentally, and he's weak as a leader. In fact, you've been described as a constant presence in Joe Biden's vice presidency. You were privy to a lot of his meetings and engagements with world leaders. You just mentioned Xi Jinping. Your book also mentions a particular episode about Vladimir Putin humiliating Joe Biden.
Yes. And I wouldn't say I was privy to meetings, my job was with the White House stenographer's press office. So whenever the press were there, that was my job, to record what Joe Biden said to the press. So I've traveled with him on Air Force Two when the press were on the plane. Sometimes he did trips with press around and I wasn't there. He did a trip to India and I didn't go on that trip. There was local press there. I don't think there was a traveling White House press. The other thing you have to understand about Joe Biden in the Obama years was, as the vice president, he doesn't get quite the level of attention that the president gets from the press. So the president, everywhere he goes, there's press people that follow him in his motorcade and on Air Force One. Whereas the vice president, they go whether they see a value in the story or not. So on those occasions, I was present for him. And that's when I saw him, like I said, Vladimir Putin made him look foolish in Moscow. And he did it by basically inviting Joe Biden to tell about his past history in Russia. And Joe Biden can't stop talking when he likes to talk about himself. And as soon as Joe Biden was in the middle of his story and he came to the line, "I've been doing this a long time," Vladimir Putin shut the lights off in the room, turned off the microphone, and Joe Biden was left speechless. And that's a hard thing to do for Joe Biden.
What's worse, to have your son's business benefit because you're the vice president, or to have your daughter and son-in-law as presidential advisors for no specific qualification, really?
Well, it depends what a job they do. If you're talking about Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, I think they're doing a good job, and they haven't gotten themselves in trouble. You know, you got to remember, at the time that Hunter Biden took this trip,
Ivanka Trump had business interests in China, just playing the devil's advocate.
Okay, she had business interests in China, but she hasn't gotten in trouble the way Hunter Biden got in trouble. She's not, you know, at the time that Hunter Biden went to China in 2013, he had been caught by the United States Navy with a cocaine test.
So she's not been caught yet, is what you're saying?
I'm saying she hasn't done it. She hasn't done it. Hunter Biden did it. And Hunter Biden keeps doing it. If you read the article that was in the New Yorker magazine in 2019, written by Adam Entus, you would see that Hunter Biden lived a life of degradation all through his White House years. And it's ended up where he's hardly even a part of his father's life anymore. And I think there's a big problem there, and there's a cover-up there. And the cover-up was put out by the Obama White House because they saw what Hunter Biden was doing to his father's vice presidency.
Donald Trump, coming back to the health, Donald Trump's health has also been questioned recently. He tweeted that he never, quote-unquote, suffered a series of mini strokes. Would you agree that age is not a strong suit of either of the presidential contenders?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I think I think Donald Trump is one of those high-energy people I've ever seen in my life. I did have a chance to work with him for a year. That was in 2017 through 2018. And I don't see him missing a step. When you see him out in front of people, he is engaging and active. He handles the press better than any American president has in 50 years. He can go out in front of the press, answer questions on a daily basis. Joe Biden is afraid to go out and talk to the press. He couldn't do a press conference day after day like President Trump does.
I'm not sure how significant a marker it is of how you're a leader if you can handle the press, but that's okay. Another book is making the headlines these days. Bob Woodward, he said that Donald Trump downplayed the seriousness of the pandemic. Would you say that a lot of these books, including perhaps yours, are conveniently timed and carefully spiced up just to exploit the election fever?
Well, I wrote this book and published it in March. And what happened was I thought I was going to be publishing it for the primary season. This was a point in time when Americans were going to decide which Democrat would be the leader of their party. And it didn't happen because Joe Biden went to the front, the COVID pandemic hit, and they put all the Democratic Party nomination events online. So no one really got a chance to see what Joe Biden was doing for months. In June, I sent a copy of my book to every senator who is on the Senate Homeland Security Committee that's investigating Hunter Biden's activities, Democrat and Republican. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden's vice presidential pick, got a copy of my book in the mail in June. If she says she didn't, don't trust the American mail for American voting, because she got a copy of it and she should know about what happened with Joe Biden and what this book was about. This book wasn't written to upend the election in the fall. This book was written to tell the truth about Joe Biden.
Mike, are tell-all books by close staff members an ethical practice? How do you expect a leader to act freely if he always fears that someone from his team is going to leave office and spill the beans?
Well, I think leaders need to act, and tell-all books have to be judged on the merits. I was an eyewitness to the events. I used sources that I saw and used. I used my transcript. I used White House sources. I don't use, and then news reporting, credible news reporting. I think that's important to get the truth out about what really happened. The reason I wrote the book is because the White House press were very lenient on Joe Biden and Barack Obama. That's what my first book was about. Time after time, I saw things happen behind the scenes that the press didn't report. That's why I had a report on Joe Biden. People who weren't getting the truth. They needed to hear the truth about Joe Biden. That's what an informed voter is, your best voter.
I have to say, you're one of the very few former Trump teammates who speak so highly of him. Mike McCormick, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us on WION.
Thank you, Palki.